Hello, brilliant souls. Welcome to Rainbows in Real Life, the show dedicated to bringing positivity to the forefront, celebrating the power and promise of the human spirit, and supporting each other in challenging times. We believe when we join together, we all live better lives, and we're exploring ways we can do that in today's ever-changing world. I'm Pamela Aubrey, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Christopher Rauch, the No Excuses Coach, and our special guest, Gigi Sabbat. So welcome to the show, both of you.
What's up, ladies? There's no gentleman here.
Thank you.
So wonderful to have both of you here. And Gigi, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on the show with us tonight. And I'm really excited to share your story out with everyone tonight, and so grateful to have you here with us. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. It's an honor to be here with you and Christopher today.
You
Yes,
have
absolutely.
such an important message to share with people. But I want to, before we kind of jump into all of that, I just want to say hello to everyone, welcome the audience and everyone who has come on to be a part of this conversation, because I think this is going to be really valuable and it's going to serve a lot of people. This is something that certainly should be shared out, because there's a lot of people out there right now that are struggling with this topic. And this is one of the reasons why I really felt this was going to be a powerful show, because I know that there are people who, if they hear this message, it could mean the difference between them doing something drastic or not. And so I want you to just start by telling us a little bit about your story, just where you're from, and kind of, you know, how you came to where you are, but in an abbreviated version.
Yes, great question. So my parents came to this country from Haiti around 35 years ago, and my parents instilled in my brothers and I the importance of obtaining an education. So I did. I attended the University of Central Florida in Orlando. I obtained my BA in political science pre-law and sociology. I interned for the senator during my undergrad studies, and then I pursued a degree in law. While in law school, I became the Student Bar Association president, which means I oversaw all the organizations in the law school. But here's the thing, my life transformed forever. I got the shock of my life one day. I had just got done studying, and then I was on a phone call with a colleague from SBA, and I'll never forget the abuser charged at me, almost strangled me to death, beat me, threw my phone across the room, and then I when I tried to get back up to go get my phone, I fell flat like a vegetable. And at the time, I didn't understand why, but the domestic violence advocates told me it's because I lost oxygen to the brain. So I'm truly grateful to be here. But understand this, after that occurred, God really helped me to understand his purpose for my life. He awakened me to step into my purpose. So I did. Hence the titles of my books, Walk With Me, God First. It's a spiritual walk. And Walk With Me is all about helping others understand the importance of never giving up. Hence, one of the poems in my book is never give up, no matter what trials or tribulations you face with in your life. And then God First is about the raising awareness about having God first place in our lives. We wouldn't have all the issues that we have in society if people were to keep God in his proper place, which is first.
Well, and I love that you really came from this place of almost not really understanding or knowing what was happening, that it was sort of like, wait, this is domestic violence, finding yourself in this position that you, I'm sure, never imagined you would find yourself in. So I want to backtrack just a little bit, because I want people to understand that this is something that happens to people in every walk of life. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, successful, famous, not famous. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Whatever walk of life you come from, you can find yourself in this situation, and to know that you are never the person to blame. And so talk to me a little bit about, like what was that experience? How did you sort of, wake up from where you were and start to move out of that situation?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. And I love how you touch base that it can happen to anyone, because it really can. Why? Because it's not taught enough in our education system. Today, I'm an advocate for domestic violence and so many other topics as well. And back to domestic violence, though, domestic violence is occurring daily. We need to be raising awareness about the various aspects that are tied to domestic violence, and understand this, that it's not just physical, it's also emotional, mental, financial, and then there's PTSD that's tied to it. And it also, as well, we need to be educating others about the red flags and the signs to look out for. Essentially, when you are in a domestic violence relationship, you're dealing with an abuser who has a narcissistic character trait. Hence why I mentioned the narcissistic character trait in my book, Walk With Me. so that others know the character traits to look out for, because then they can avoid those type of relationships. Because when you're in a domestic violence relationship, you are in an abusive relationship. Right. Again, I go back to what I shared with you. I got the shock of my life when I almost lost my life. And then I was out of that relationship. I was done. Yeah. So if you're listening to this message today and you're in a domestic violence relationship, you need to leave that relationship. Get out of that relationship. Why? Because you are in a dangerous situation. You are in a dangerous situation.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. I mean, what are some of the signs? What are things that people should know? Hey, this is a big red flag. If somebody's doing some of these things, maybe they haven't hit you yet, maybe it hasn't gotten physical, but here are some things that you can see ahead of time.
Yes. So it does happen to men and it happens to women as well. And I'll circle back to that. But here's the thing. Some of the signs that you can look out for in the red flags are that this person will try to isolate you from your loved ones, people you care about, and all that you're doing, your work, anything that you're doing, try to hinder that and try to keep you from that. They will try to tell you how to dress, how you should look, how you should not look. They will, if you're a woman, they would try to make you not wear makeup or tell you, why are you wearing makeup? Why are you so pretty? All these things. If you're a man, they will try to control you. One male that was on one of my global virtual panels for domestic violence, he was hit so badly, he lost vision to his sight. So again, it can be very tremendous, especially when it gets horrific, when it gets so physical. And again, you need to leave that relationship. And that person will also follow you. They become a stalker. It's just like you're dealing with a stalker as well.
So what do you say to the people out there who I've talked to many times about this particular subject? What do you say to them when they say, you know what, I knew it. I had a gut feeling early on, but I didn't listen to my gut. What do you say to the men and women out there in order for them to not make that same exact mistake that so many people make? When they feel that gut instinct, that should be the time that they depart or, get help. What do you say to those people that ignore their gut instinct?
Great question, Christopher. Essentially, your gut instinct is trying to tell you you are in danger. Listen to your gut. Follow that intuition because it is trying to save your life. I will never forget, my gut feeling would be so horrific. Some days I wouldn't even eat and I would say something isn't right. Something isn't right. If you are feeling like that, you need to get out. You are in danger. You are in a domestic violence relationship. Get out.
And what do you say to the people that have always been in that type of environment from the time they've been little kids, their parents did it, and now this is all they know? How do they break out of that cycle if that's all they've ever known?
Seek help from an officer. Seek help from an officer, because essentially when you're in that abusive relationship, again, that person will try to control you and manipulate you as well. There's gaslighting that's involved, stonewalling that's involved, so many different character traits that people are not aware of that we need to educate others about in our community, because all the character traits are the same that for the abuser. There's a pattern there. So if there's a pattern, we need to be educating about others about it more.
Yeah, I think that's such a valid point. It's like this hasn't just started happening. This has been happening really all through time. So we now really have come to a place, I think, in modern society where we understand it in ways we haven't in the past. And we have resources that we haven't in the past. And I think that's really powerful for people to understand as well. Like if you're in this situation, you are not alone. There are resources. And I know sometimes it can be very scary for people to leave because they can feel like, it might be worse for me to leave. There could be consequences. This person could come after me, those sorts of things, or they're fearful for their children. So what do you recommend for people in those situations?
Yes, I would highly recommend if you can seek help from someone in your support system, family member, reach out to those individuals, give them a heads up. I'll never forget, someone shared a film with me in regards to a woman who was in danger. And what did she do? She went with her boyfriend to the vet to get help for the pet, but the pet wasn't sick or anything. The pet didn't have any issues, but she slipped out a note to the person at the front desk saying, I need help. He has a gun. He has a gun.
Right.
So if it needs to get to that point where you need to write a note or something, you need help, do it. Do it. Seek help.
I think that's so important. And it is scary. I mean, I think it's okay for people to understand there's going to be those moments when you're scared. If you've been in that situation, if you've had someone assault you physically, you know what that's like. You understand that there is a level of fear that's created by that that makes it very difficult to step out of that situation. And yet, if you're willing to do so, there are resources to help you. So thank you so much for making that point. And so with that, then, what are some of the, I know that you're involved with some organizations and you do some of this work yourself. So what are some of those resources that you're familiar with?
Yes. So last year in 2020, I hosted the global virtual panel of domestic violence survivors, and I brought leaders from all over the world who have survived domestic violence themselves, both men and women. And I want to raise awareness again that it's not just physical, but it's also emotional, mental, financial, and there's PTSD tied to it, as I mentioned before. But also the fact that it's not just happening in heterosexual relationships. This is happening in homosexual relationships as well. We had a male who was homosexual who hopped on our panel, and he shared how it happened to him. How it happened to him. So it can happen to anyone. And then also for those individuals who were not homosexual, but then they dealt with someone who was homosexual and controlling and manipulative, who was a narcissist, who got them in those type of relationships. So you talk about someone who was a Christian, who then ran into someone or met someone who was homosexual, who forced them to do acts or do things or held them against their will.
Wow.
We need to raise awareness about this, that again, it's not just happening to individuals in heterosexual relationships, but also individuals in homosexual relationships.
Wow, that is crazy. And just for everybody just tuning in right now, we just want to encourage you that if you have any questions, you want to engage with us, please, of course, always in the comments, whether you're watching us live or on the replay, feel free to ask us questions and leave us comments. And that way we can get back to you if it's on the replay, but as well. But no, thank you. Please continue.
Yeah. And I also want to just let everyone know, we'd love for you to share with us if you're having a challenge, even if it's not related to this exact topic, if you're having a challenge in your life right now, share that with us so that we can then in turn help you as well as you're facing that. But I want to go back to what we were just discussing, because I think this is really important. People in these situations, a lot of times, they've gotten there because they haven't felt like they had anyone to reach out to. And I know that there's often a lot of churches that have resources. Their communities have organizations that will help tie them into resources. Can you tell us some of the organizations that you work with specifically?
Yes, so I work with various organizations in various counties as well, and the leaders that spoke on our panels as well, who are really looking to help individuals who are survivors of domestic violence or who are going through it, or that to avoid them from going through that. So it's all about positive intervention for positive prevention. And it starts with education. We need to educate others about domestic violence. And we need to really raise awareness. Again, it goes back to the fact that it does not just happen to women. It's being taught in our society that this is only happening to women.
So I have a question for you, based on the fact of, I love that what you're talking about is early training, advanced education, and things of that nature. Given the fact that the kids are the ones that are experiencing that, I was in a home where my stepfather abused my mom and vice versa, and I was abused and everything else. So how early on do you recommend, talking to kids about domestic violence and helping them through and processing those emotions related to that, so we can avoid some of that PTSD and that repetitive behavior down the line?
Yes, I would definitely say if there's like a workshop that we can create or something of that sort that we can actually educate those students on early on and tell them the signs to look out for. Or if you are someone who is going through this right now, or you have this in your life, then you need to let your professor know or your teacher know. Reach out to the counselor, let us know so we can do something about it.
And so for you, what are some of the ways that you dealt with then coming out of that experience? And obviously you've done a lot in your life, you've been able to move forward from there, but what were some of the ways that you did that?
Yes, so definitely I would say I'm grateful for my support system, my family, and also the domestic violence advocates in my community. They were very helpful. And of course, my friends, my close friends. So definitely, again, those resources are there. Your support system is there for you.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people who may be afraid, maybe they've never been to a therapist, maybe they don't know what to expect, or they've been to therapists in the past and it hasn't been a good experience. They haven't necessarily felt like it was helpful to them, or maybe even they felt like they were stigmatized somehow by it. What do you say to people in those situations?
I would say contact law enforcement, because law enforcement had a huge role in my case as well and helped me tremendously. So I would definitely say reach out to them because they will direct you to the proper place.
Mm. And so what does that look like for someone who's, stepping out, having the courage to take that first step? What does that process look like, just so someone understands that before they actually get into it?
Yes, what it looks like is that you're actually going to be advised on exactly the steps to do. So they're going to help you. So again, just really reach out to them. Go to the station. They will help you.
Thank you for that. And thinking about going back to, obviously I'm a guy, duh. And going back to the male aspect of this, and I know guys that have been, physical domestic abuse victims from women. What are some of the ways that men can handle that situation? Because obviously they want to, restrain or whatever, they want to understand. What are some things, and men who are watching, because we got Samuel here in the house. Thank you, Samuel, for being here. What are some things we can help them better understand the domestic violence, where it's coming from, and how best to deal with it, aside from having to completely just go through law enforcement and things of that nature? Is there ways to squelch that, and ways that we can understand a little bit more why it's happening, and maybe that we're the cause of it?
Yes, great question, Christopher. So essentially, back to what one of our panelists said, Grady Taylor, on the domestic violence panel, in regards to what he was dealing with. And I mean, for men, it's kind of different. They feel like it's different. Why? Because they're taught in our society that they can't have emotion, or that they can't really express themselves. So I know for him, it was really difficult to come forward about that, but he did, because he understood that it would save someone's life. So if you're a male today and you're listening to this and you're in a domestic violence relationship, or you've been through a domestic violence relationship, seek help. You're not alone. And really, I would just say, again, utilize that support system and speak to them about it. And really, if you are in danger, again, utilize that note method. If you need to write a note to someone and say, hey, I need help, people are there to help you. It's just a matter of taking action in regards to seeking help.
That's so important. I mean, you have to take action. I mean, I interviewed a lady named Monica Kretschmer from the Universal Women's Network up in Canada. And when she told her story on my show, she said that essentially what happened was she was married and successful and had a 7-month-old baby boy. And she said that she thought the alcoholism and everything else was going to be fine and better. It's a really great interview. And she finally just realized that, that she had to get out of the place. And so she went to the homeless women's shelter that she used to donate all of her clothes and donate money to. She grabbed her 7-month-old baby and says, I got to get the heck out of here, and went down there. And so she went from being a person who donated in that and got out of there. And my point on that, and I highly commend that, because, she actually did take action. So many people sit there and say, I don't know what to do. I have no other choice. It's like, I tell them to go live in their car, go do something, get away from this person, drive to another state, whatever it is you got to do. But so often it doesn't seem that people will do that because it's comfortable, it's familiar. What are some of those things that you could say about that to people who might be watching this, experiencing that same thing?
Yes, oftentimes individuals stay in those type of relationships because of love, but they don't understand that's not love. They are being manipulated and controlled by a narcissist. So when you're dealing with a narcissist, again, the character traits are in alignment with that abuser. So it really, really has a pattern. And we really need to focus in on that, because then this can all be prevented, and individuals would understand that they do have a choice. You do have that decision you can make for yourself. You can leave that relationship. It's all a matter of understanding what you're dealing with, being aware of who you're dealing with, and understanding that you can get out. Because a lot of times they feel stuck. They feel like they don't have anywhere to go, that they don't have any help, but you do. If you're listening to this today, you have help. People are here to help you, such as myself and Christopher and Pamela, I'm sure, as well. And we know individuals as well. If you know someone, seek help through your support system or your community.
Absolutely. And what you said was so valuable. And I really want to, dig a little deeper in this whole idea of, narcissism and what that looks like. Because I think often people get into relationships, a lot of times in the beginning, it's all great. That person can seem like Mr. or Mrs. Wonderful. And then 6 months down the road, you're seeing a completely different person emerge. And by then, you're already in this relationship, you're already in this deal with this person, and you've got to kind of figure out, wait a minute, who is this other person that keeps showing up, and then you've got all the gaslighting and things like that start going on. And people can, start to wonder if they're just crazy. Are they just imagining things? And then the person's telling them that they're crazy and they're imagining things, right? And so it becomes kind of this snowball effect. And so how can people start to identify, if they're experiencing some of those things, how can they better and more quickly identify, yes, this person is someone that is dangerous. They are someone who is going to take me down a road I don't want to go down.
Yes, great question. So I love what you said there, because in the beginning, they do come off very charismatic and very charming, and they are very kind and sweet. And in the community, they appear to everyone as though they're very kind and sweet. It's somebody you would never even imagine, but they're the complete opposite behind closed doors. And a few months down the road, they will flip. It's like just a flip. They will flip on you. It's like you're dealing with a completely different person. And that's when you know you're in a domestic violence relationship, because then they start doing, like you said, the gaslighting, the stonewalling. There's so many different character traits that are tied to this narcissistic character trait. And then it can get very abusive. And again, if it happens once, it will happen again. It will happen again. That's why I say you're in danger. You need to get out of that relationship.
I think that's such an important point too, because a lot of times people will, and this is very normal. It's, you start making excuses, you start saying, oh, well, they were just really upset that one night, or, and then it happens again. And it's like, well, okay, well, they were just really upset that night too. And the reality is, no, this is going to become a pattern. It's not ever going to be just one or two times.
I'll share this with you. Prior to the third time that I was almost strangled to death, I had recollection in my memory that I was strangled twice before then. So again, it all goes back to following that gut instinct.
Yeah,
it all goes back to
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, the domestic violence advocates told me, Gigi, what you recollect in your mind, that memory, it happened. It happened. Unfortunately, it happened. And when I asked the abuser, did you strangle me? No, I believe you just have a cold. See, but that ultimately led to the third strangulation, which I almost lost my life. So if you're listening to this today, again, if you have that gut feeling or that intuition that something wrong is happening, or in my case, if you're strangled and you don't have a full recollection, but that memory is there, or you feel something is wrong, get out, you're in danger. And also, again, strangulation is the #1 cause of death in domestic violence relationships. So that's unfortunate, because why? If somebody strangles you, there's no telling what time lapse can happen in regards to that person losing their lives. And I highly did my research. I'm very educated on this subject matter now. And why do I say that? Because you can deal with someone who walks out alive today if they just gone through a domestic violence relationship. Let's say, for example, Sally was strangled today, and Sally comes out alive. Sally could die tomorrow in her bed. And that's the reality, because you don't know how much damage happens around that area when somebody strangles you, unfortunately.
So I have a very personal question for you on the emotion side of all of this. #1, do you still have contact with that person? And #2, what are your feelings about that person at this point in your journey?
No, I do not have contact with that individual. But I did forgive that individual. Why? Because God first, and essentially forgiveness truly matters. And I am a woman of God, and I truly believe in forgiveness. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think, it's important for anyone who may be in a situation that's really difficult to understand, if you're in that situation, forgiveness will come in time, but that doesn't mean you stay in that situation. It doesn't mean that you remain in a dangerous situation, because that puts everyone at risk, not just you, but anyone who might be close to you. And it's really not worth it in the end. If someone's done something to you in the past, they'll do it again, and it will get worse over time. And that's the other piece of this that I think is really important, is to understand that this typically escalates. Even if it starts out as emotional abuse or mental abuse, it will. And it's different in all situations. You can't say, in 6 months this will happen, or in a year it'll happen, but eventually it'll escalate, And so for people to understand that if they're seeing those signs of either emotional or mental abuse, that they can expect that at some point that can become physical. And so I'm curious, you know, in your experience working with other women and even in your own experience, what do you suggest people do early on to kind of cut that tie with someone in a way that allows them to get away safely?
Yes. So there are resources in the community in regards to domestic violence. Oftentimes individuals would tend to avoid it because, again, they are dealing with someone who's very manipulative, and that gut instinct is there. Those red signs are there. Those red flags are there. It's just they want to avoid it. Why? Because, again, it all goes back to them believing that they're in love, but that's not love. If you, again, that's it's just not love. You need to get out of that relationship.
Super, super important point. And to know that you're gonna remain in that space of feeling like you've lost something for a little while. You know, if you have to leave and that's the circumstance, just to know it's not going to be easy to do, but that in the long run, you're literally saving your own life.
That's right. It's not going to be easy. It will not be easy.
But again, it'll be worth it. That's the main point. It's not going to be easy. That's why I tell people like, oh, it's going to be hard. I'm like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. It's going to be hard, but guess what? It's going to be worth it. It's like climbing the side of a mountain and going, oh, wow, this is tough. But you get to a view and go, wow, the view is so amazing. It's so beautiful. You know, you get there. I mean, you have to go through that. And that's an interesting aspect of so many people want, you know, the benefits of things, but they don't want to go through that tough stuff. And they can either look at it as like, I'm going to go through it now and get through a little bit of it. And it's going to be uncomfortable and stressful and I'm not going to like it. Or I can wait, you know, another 6 years, waste my life, wind up having with a bunch of regrets and have to do it when it's 10 times harder and more traumatic on my kid. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I don't know what that sound is, but it's like,
I think somebody's getting a messenger call.
It's not me. Yeah,
my Facebook is closed, so I don't know.
My brain was doing this. So here's a shift on all of this, and I've been interested in this. Obviously, we have a lot of things going on in the culture today, and things are being brought up from years ago, like, oh, that person did this to me, you know, so many years ago. We got a lot of that stuff going on right now. And personally, I shouldn't say I'm a little concerned. I'm very concerned about where that's going to go as far as in this particular conversation. You know, somebody has a fight and, oh yeah, you're my ex-husband. Yeah. Oh yeah, he abused me. And there's like no proof, but that guy could potentially, you know, have something happen to him, or the girl could potentially have something happen to him. What are your thoughts on that for both of you from the standpoint? Because I'm seeing things happen and I'm just like, whoa, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit. But also, you know, as somebody, I don't have anything to worry about, but I can understand some people thinking like, okay, you know, wow, I did this to my wife, you know, 10 years ago. Is that going to come up and bite me in the ass and get me fired from my job? So just looking at some current event issues with what we're talking about.
Yes, I will say this. You need to share your story. It's going to save lives. That's one. But two, also, it's a healing process. And then also as well, again, it goes back to utilizing your pain for purpose, because it is going to save someone's life when you share your story. I've had many men and women come forward who said it has helped them, or has helped them in the situation they're in now. They're afraid, they're scared. So really, it all starts with that person and understanding their self-worth and that they do matter and that they are enough. If you're listening to this, you are enough. Again, you are enough. Write that down. And utilize your pain for purpose, and don't let the past be brought in the future in a manner that's going to bring you down. You are not what has happened to you. Your past or your circumstances, your trials or tribulations, let it go. Let it go. Let the baggage from the past stay there and take the lesson with you. Take the lesson with you. Leave the baggage in the past.
You're not passionate about this at all.
Love that. So talk to us a little bit about what that's looked like for you, what your healing process has looked like.
Oh, yes. So I have literally left that baggage, although I talk about it to raise awareness and to educate others. Again, it started with forgiveness, understanding to the fullest extent what had happened to me. I forgave that individual, understood what happened, but I need to move on with my life now. I have moved forward and I've left the baggage there, taken the lesson with me, and I'm continuing to educate others about this subject matter in regards to domestic violence, because it will save someone's life. I wish I had met myself before that happened.
That's so powerful. So how did you go about doing that? How did you bring healing into your life?
God first. God. Essentially, I reread the Bible and then I got baptized again as an adult. My relationship with God grew tremendously. And essentially, when we read the Bible, God is speaking to us. We are building a relationship with him. So we need to listen to him. We need to get quiet, lean in, and listen to God. And I tell you what, God actually commanded me to host these panels that I did in 2020. He said, my child, I need you to go and host this domestic violence panel, this global virtual panel of domestic violence survivors. I said, yes, sir. I did that. And I thought we were done there. He said, now I need you to do one on sexual assault. I said, okay, I survived both. He said, and now I need you to do one about breast cancer. And I'm passionate about breast cancer as well. And so I did. I hosted all of those panels. And I said, okay, we're done in 2020. He said, no, my child, now I need you to host these 7 more in 2021, including the leadership conference and the business conference. So that's 9. I said, okay. So I'm just listening to him. Last week, we hosted one on human trafficking. And both men and women come forward to raise awareness that it's happening to both men and women.
Absolutely.
It's not being educated enough in our communities, and human trafficking is happening right here in our backyards.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit, coming from a guy who's not a very, religious person, a very spiritual person. And, God has sent you these messages. What messages is God sending to the kids that have to go through this experience?
Yes. So it's a spiritual journey. And essentially, if you're a child who is going through that, again, you have to seek help from an adult, someone who's highly educated on this subject matter that can help you get through. That's why it starts with us as the adults to really, really help these children. And how we can do that is by educating them. Education is truly important.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. And to understand too, as adults, our responsibility, what role we play in this. If we're not the person in the situation, then, there's probably someone around us who is. I mean, we know that this is a very common occurrence. And so what are some of the things that we can do, in our communities or in our churches to help support people who may be in these situations, or just to grow awareness and be a part of educating others?
Yes, and it starts with individuals educating themselves on that subject matter as well in regards to the signs, because if you understand the signs, and you could be around someone and the signs are right in front of you, but unless you know, then you can't help anyone. If you are aware of those signs and the narcissistic character traits, you say, oh, wait a minute, I think Bob is abusing Sally, or Sally's abusing Bob. You'll see the signs because you'll be aware. That's why we need to educate about those red flags and those signs to look out for, and the narcissistic character trait. And, I want to go back and circle back to what we talked about earlier in regards to really the fact that it can happen to anyone. I want to focus on the fact that it can also happen to anyone with any job title. Your job title doesn't really necessarily mean anything. You can be a social worker and it still happens to you because they're not educating it enough in regards to the topics that we need to be educated on, which is the narcissistic character traits, the stonewalling, the gaslighting, those red flags, those signs, following our gut feeling, like Christopher said, our intuition.
Right.
That's where it starts, education.
Well, and I think too, sometimes when you're in that situation, even if you know some of these things, it's very hard to see them in your own life. These are things that can come up and be very subtle, especially in the beginning. And so I love that you are emphasizing the need for education. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like shows like this are so important, because unless people like us are out here talking about these things, then people aren't going to have that education. They're not going to get the message. Because frankly, this is not something that we talk about in daily conversation. You're not asking Joe down the street, hey, are you beating your wife? That's not the stuff we're talking about.
How's that beating going, Joe? You need some help with that?
Yet we know, it's like, if there's something going on 2 doors down, the neighbors are typically talking about stuff in the neighborhood. And, just to have this sense of, we do have responsibility for one another. We do have a responsibility to have at least enough awareness to be able to, especially if there's children involved, to help protect people.
That's
Samuel's
right.
been chiming in here with some good nuggets there.
Okay, good. Yeah, and thank you for that, because I popped away from my comments there for a little bit. So
I was like, Samuel's on fire. Thank you, Samuel.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So he says men do struggle with sharing emotion as they learn how powerful and liberating it is to share. Men are awakening in droves with good help. Ask, seek, knock. That is so powerful. Yes. Thank you, Samuel. And then he even says words and habits can be as bad or worse than physical abuse. I think that's a really great point. And I think that's a really great point for children, especially. You know, if someone in your home is saying things to you that are really mean, I mean, if they're using inappropriate language, if they're swearing at you, cussing at you, you know, those sorts of things, and being really derogatory or hurtful, then you need to talk to somebody about that. You know, there are school counselors, there are people who want to listen. That's why they're there, and they want to help. So I think that's really, really important to acknowledge as well. But certainly, yes, I love that you've brought up the fact that it's not just women, it's also men. And I do think, you know, in situations where it's men, they can often feel like, well, you know, I mean, I'm going to call the cops because this girl is beating me up. You know, they're probably going to laugh at me.
Yes,
you know, like
call them.
There's this, you know, awkward, like, how, you know, how's that going to work kind of thing. So for, you know, for a man in that situation, you know, really, what is the best way for them to handle something?
Yes. Speak to a close friend. Speak to your family member. They will understand. Seek help from your support system or someone in your community. They are there to help. They are there to help. And also, I want to touch base on the fact that it can happen to someone who's very productive in their daily lives or very active in their communities. Like I was myself. I just explained to you that I was in law school at the time. So you can imagine I was studying day in, day out, day in, day out. And I'll keep repeating it because I just remember just studying head and book, head and book, head and book. And then boom, my life transformed forever. This is what I tell people, is that it can happen to anyone on any caliber. So it can happen to a medical student, someone in medical school. Because again, and I look back now and I look at the signs and I put everything together and I say, okay, because the abuser is aware that you're under this you're focused. You're so focused on your studies. So they will find manipulate you.
Very interesting. Larry says, hi, Larry. Thank you for being with us this evening. And Samuel says, education has to start at home. Never rely on government to teach truth or your worldview that matters to you. Yeah, that's a great point. And really, this is something that should be taught in schools. It should have been taught in schools a long time ago. You know, it's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around the fact that we've got, you know, generations that have grown up without any knowledge around what this really is and how it affects people. You know, and now that I work with the clients that I do, I realize that, you know, a lot of this trauma that we've seen over the years really could have been prevented with some education, with some people just understanding and even just like we're talking about here, knowing how to reach out, knowing how to get help, and knowing that help is even available. So what are some of the things that you tell people, you know, primarily when you're speaking, when you're out doing these panels? What are some of the key points that you feel are most important for people to hear?
Yes. Again, back to what I said, men and women, physical, mental, emotional, financial, PTSD tied to it. And we need to raise awareness about that. And it's happening in homes. And it's not just in those relationships with with someone you love. It also can happen with family members as well. People forget to mention that part, but it does. I know people who were abused by family members. So we really need to raise awareness about that. And it starts in our education system. We need to educate more about domestic violence, but also in our homes as well. As parents, individuals need to educate their children on domestic violence early on. A lot of parents tell their children, oh, you should not hit someone or do that or things of that nature. But no, we need to go deeper than that. And we need to educate them to not allow it to happen to them as well.
Absolutely, yes. And to Christopher's earlier point, you know, I think for children who are, and this is really a big issue right now, that are home with their parent and that they have an abusive parent, to know that they can still reach out to their school counselor. They can still make contact with someone. It doesn't have to be a police officer. That might be a little scary, but to reach out to a teacher, someone that send them a message and say, you know what, I can't even do my schoolwork. I'm really afraid, and start to open up that conversation and know that people want to help. And I think that's, I know that there's probably not a whole lot of children watching this show, but I'm hoping that what will happen is that other parents are paying attention, and they're seeing kids, they're seeing kids in situations that are questionable, or they're wondering, are these kids, in a bad situation? And then being able to then give them this same advice, or in some way help or support them. So, Christopher, I know you've got something else that you want to share, but if you kind of give us some closing thoughts.
Sure. I was just actually thinking about what domestic violence bills were currently in legislature for 2021, and potentially we could find out a way to support. But final thoughts. I mean, obviously it's all about, the fact that we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to love ourselves. I've done so many coaching calls over the last year during COVID, free coaching calls just to help people. And I found that very, very, what's the word I want to use? Overwhelmingly, people don't love themselves. And I'm finding that if they don't love themselves, then they're not going to cherish themselves. They're going to feel that they don't deserve anything else. So it's important for you guys out there watching this and listening to this to really take your self-love and your self-care. So important that you need it like your breath. You absolutely need it. Sometimes we think, I don't know what's going to happen to that person. If I leave him, he's going to go crazy. Self-love, ladies and gentlemen, you have to do that. You cannot pour from an empty bucket. You cannot continue to do what you've always done, expecting different results. It's asinine. It's ridiculous. You have to stand up. You have to go out and do whatever it is you possibly have to do. If you have to go live in a shed on somebody's backyard for 6 months and save up your money so you can go stay in a motel room for 6 months, whatever you have to do, you have to stand up for yourself, because most likely nobody's going to stand up for you. And what's eventually going to happen, especially if you have kids, you're going to screw them up. You're going to give them a lifetime of pain. So I'm always about, stand up, do whatever it is you got to do, be unstoppable, and walk your path, and then go help other people do it just exactly like you're doing it, Gigi. So I applaud you in your passion and everything that you've accomplished.
Thank you, Christopher.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
And I will say this, that self-care truly does matter. And other individuals need to love themselves. It starts with us. You need to love yourself. I love it, Christopher. Very powerful.
Thank you.
Yes. And Samuel says, teach the kids how to become triggered less. It awakens awareness for the child. Yeah, having conversations, just talking to our kids about our emotions and how do we deal with them, and what are the right, what do healthy relationships look like? What are the right ways to deal with certain things like anger or frustration, and having those conversations, not just with our own kids, but, let's say you've got a support group of kids that are studying with your own child, any way that we can help kids understand, have this information out in front of them is super important. Gigi, any final thoughts?
Yes, I will tell those individuals to never give up. No matter what you go through in this life, you need to get back up. And also, you are not what happens to you. Do not let any major challenges in your life keep you down. And I do want to share this poem with your audience today. It's titled, yes, ma'am, you got it. It's titled, Never Give Up. Walls surround me. That's all I see. All I want is to be free. I scream at the top of my lungs, God, please help me. The back of my mind wants to give up. Then my heart reminds me that I'm one of a kind. I feel closed in with nowhere to go. Then I remember the beauty of life is to grow. It doesn't matter if you grow slow. Growing is the purpose of life in everyone. It doesn't matter how old you are, the color of your skin, your religion, your political views, the amount of money you make, the car you drive, how many friends you have, how many followers you have on social media, your job title, how tall or how short you are, your gender, your sexuality, your age, your fashion style, your body structure, the type of music you listen to, your family's culture, or anything else that our society's education system has altered our minds to focus on. Always remember, you are in control of your mind's reticular activating system. You focus on what you want to see, hear, and believe in. Therefore, growth is in everyone. Never give up. The light may seem dim right now, but all you need to do is wake up the reticular activating system in your mind, and you too will realize you are one of a kind. Never give up.
Booyah.
Wow. That
Mic drop.
was
Mic
beautiful.
drop.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And thank you again, everyone who has been on with us tonight. Samuel says, get this woman on Clubhouse. I love it. There you go. There you go. Such a joy to be on with all of you. Gigi, share with us one last time the name of your book.
Yes, the name of my book is Walk With Me, and the second book is God First. Walk with me, God first. It's all a
Wonderful.
secret.
Wonderful. Yeah. So pick those up and please share this out. If you know of anyone that you might be concerned about, or you just know that you want to share this message, you want to get these messages out so that people have awareness, they have the education. You know, no one wants to see their child end up in this situation, or their friends, or, you know, any of their family members. So let's build the awareness. Let's keep the conversation going. And thank you again so much for being here and listening. And thank you again, Gigi, for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gigi. You rock.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you all. Have a beautiful rest of your evening.
You guys rock. Stay safe.